Hi, my name's Andrew, and I used to believe that trust was the foundation of marriage, that vows actually meant something. But one Tuesday afternoon, I came home early from a business trip to find my wife's car in the driveway alongside a sleek BMW I didn't recognize. When I walked through my own front door, I heard laughter echoing from upstairs, her laughter mixed with a man's voice I'd never heard before. In that moment, standing in my own hallway with my suitcase still in hand, I realized my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. I was living in a carefully constructed illusion. But before that week was over, I did something she never saw coming. I packed that man's bags myself. And what I put inside didn't just expose the truth. It dismantled everything she'd built on lies. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I never thought I'd be the type of man to stand frozen in his own hallway, listening to his world collapse from the floor above. But there I was, 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, my leather briefcase still gripping my palm, staring at the staircase like it might offer me an explanation. The conference in Seattle had wrapped up early. Technical difficulties with the keynote presentation meant they'd canceled the afternoon sessions, so I'd caught the first flight back to Portland instead of staying the extra night. I'd even thought about surprising Victoria with dinner at that Italian place she loved downtown, the one with the handmade pasta she always ordered. But when I pulled into our driveway on Elmwood Avenue, her silver Lexus wasn't alone. Parked beside it was a midnight blue BMW 7 Series, gleaming under the afternoon sun like it belonged there. The personalized plate read, Exec 1. I didn't recognize it, but something about its presence felt invasive, wrong. I'd unlocked the front door quietly, not intentionally trying to be stealthy, just operating on autopilot. The house smelled different. A cologne I didn't recognize hung in the air, something expensive and assertive. Then I heard it. Laughter drifting down from upstairs. Her laughter, that genuine, unguarded kind she hadn't directed at me in months, maybe years. And a man's voice, deep, confident, comfortable. My feet wouldn't move. I stood there in the entryway of the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 8 years, listening to my wife laugh with another man in what I assumed was our bedroom. The briefcase slipped from my hand and hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud. The laughter stopped. Footsteps crossed the floor above me. I heard Victoria's voice, muffled but distinct. It's fine, probably just the wind or something. The wind. In our house. With all the doors closed. I should have walked up those stairs, should have confronted them both, right then. Instead, I backed out slowly, pulled the door closed with a soft click, and sat in my car. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I watched that BMW like it was a foreign object that had crashed through my reality. 20 minutes passed. Maybe 30. Time felt elastic, unreliable. Then the front door opened. A man emerged first, mid-40s, tailored gray suit, perfectly styled hair with just enough silver at the temples to look distinguished. He moved with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having been told no. Victoria appeared behind him, wearing a silk robe I'd bought her last Christmas. She was smiling, touching his arm, saying something that made him grin. He kissed her, not a quick peck, a real kiss, the kind that speaks of familiarity, of routine. Then he walked to that BMW, slid behind the wheel, and drove away. Victoria watched him go, standing in our doorway like she was seeing off a guest after a pleasant afternoon visit. I waited until she went back inside. Then I started my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove through neighborhoods I'd seen 1,000 times but suddenly didn't recognize. Every street sign, every familiar storefront felt like set pieces in a play I'd been watching without realizing I was also performing in it. I ended up at Harborview Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. Joggers passed by. A woman threw a ball for her golden retriever. The world continued like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Victoria. Hey babe, how's Seattle? Miss you. I stared at those words. The casual lie of it. The performance. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat there as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if I could feel anything besides numb. Questions cycled through my mind. How long? Who was he? Did our friends know? Her family? Was I the only one who'd been living in the dark? I thought about our relationship, trying to pinpoint when things had shifted. We'd met 9 years ago at a marketing conference in San Francisco. I was there representing my firm, a mid-level financial consultant, trying to network. She was there with her startup, all energy and ambition, talking about disrupting the wellness industry with her app concept. We'd connected over hotel bar cocktails and a shared cynicism about corporate buzzwords. She'd made me laugh. Made me feel like maybe I wasn't as boring as I'd always suspected. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, married in a ceremony at the Ashford Estate Gardens that cost more than my car but made her happy. Those early years were good. I thought they were good. I worked long hours at Morrison Financial Group, climbing from consultant to senior analyst to director. She built her company, Vitality Wellness Solutions, from a concept to a legitimate business with investors and employees. We were both busy, both driven, both building something. But somewhere along the way, busy became distant. Building something became building separate things. Date nights turned into quick dinners, where we both checked our phones. Conversations about our days became status updates. When was the last time we'd really talked? Really connected? I couldn't remember. My phone buzzed again, another text from Victoria. Presentation going well? Let me know when you're free to call. The performance continued. She had no idea I knew, no idea I'd seen. Part of me wanted to call her right then, to hear how she'd explain it, what excuse she'd manufacture. But a quieter, colder part of me wanted to wait, to watch, to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I made a move. I drove home as darkness settled over the city. The BMW was gone. Victoria's car sat alone in the driveway now, innocent and ordinary. I parked beside it and sat for a moment, gathering myself. When I walked in, she was in the kitchen, wearing yoga pants and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked up from her laptop and smiled. That same smile I'd fallen for 9 years ago. "Hey, you're back early. I thought you weren't flying in until tomorrow." Her performance was flawless. Surprised but pleased, no hint of guilt or panic, just my wife, happy to see me home. "Technical issues," I said, setting my briefcase down. "They canceled the rest of the conference." "Oh, that's frustrating." She stood, walked over, and kissed my cheek. The same cheek she'd probably kissed him with hours earlier. "Well, I'm glad you're home. I was just going to order Thai food. Want your usual?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She ordered the food, chatting about her day while I stood there, watching her perform. She talked about a difficult client call, a problem with their app's latest update, her plans to meet her sister Hannah for brunch on Saturday. Every word felt like a layer of paint over a rotting wall, covering the decay but not fixing it. We ate dinner at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless meals. She asked about Seattle, and I gave her vague answers about panels and networking. She nodded, half listening, occasionally glancing at her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching her check a text. "Yeah, just work stuff, investor update." She set the phone down. Nothing that can't wait. I wondered if it was him, if they were texting while I sat right here. The thought should have made me angry, but I felt oddly detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. After dinner, we moved to the living room. She settled on the couch with her laptop, working on something, while a home renovation show played on the television. I sat in the armchair, staring at the screen without seeing it. This was our life now. 2 people in the same room, occupying the same space, but living in completely different realities. She thought I was the Andrew who'd left for Seattle yesterday morning, the husband who trusted her, who believed in us. She didn't know I was someone else now, someone who'd seen the truth and was trying to figure out what to do with it. Around 10, she closed her laptop and stretched. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed?" The thought of lying next to her in that bed, the same bed where he'd probably been hours earlier, made my stomach turn. "I've got some work emails to catch up on. I'll be up soon." She kissed the top of my head and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. I started typing, documenting everything. The BMW's license plate, the time I'd arrived, what I'd seen, the text she'd sent while I was sitting in the park. Every detail, time-stamped and recorded. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be the fool who confronted his cheating wife with nothing but emotion and accusations. If this marriage was over, if my life as I knew it was ending, I was going to face it with clarity and evidence. I was going to be smart about this. The next morning, I woke up on the couch. I'd told Victoria I'd fallen asleep working, which she'd accepted without question. She'd already left for an early meeting by the time I dragged myself to the kitchen for coffee. Standing there in the empty house, I tried to remember when things had started to feel off. When had the woman I married become someone I didn't recognize? Or had I just not been paying attention? We'd bought this house 6 years ago, right after she'd secured her Series A funding for Vitality Wellness Solutions. It was a 4-bedroom craftsman-style home in the West Side neighborhood. More house than we needed, but she'd insisted we'd grow into it. "We'll fill these rooms," she'd said, squeezing my hand as we'd sign the closing documents. "This is our forever home." I'd believed her. I'd believed in all of it. Those first years in the house had been good, or so I thought. I'd been promoted to Director of Client Relations at Morrison Financial Group, which came with longer hours but significantly better pay. Victoria's company had been growing rapidly, expanding from 15 employees to nearly 50 in 2 years. We were both busy, both successful, both exhausted. But we'd made time for each other, or tried to. Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday night wine, and whatever series we were binge-watching. Monthly date nights where we'd try new restaurants and remember why we'd fallen in love in the first place. When had those traditions stopped? I couldn't pinpoint an exact moment. It had been gradual, like water eroding stone. One missed date night because of her investor dinner. One Sunday where I'd had to handle a client crisis. One Thursday where we were both too tired to do anything but scroll our phones in separate rooms. I walked through the house, really looking at it for the first time in months. The living room we'd painted together, arguing cheerfully about whether the color was sage or moss. The kitchen where we'd hosted dinner parties for friends who'd slowly stopped coming around. The guest bedroom that still held boxes we'd never unpacked because we'd been waiting to turn it into something else. Something we'd never discussed explicitly but had both understood. That understanding felt like a foreign concept now. I made my way upstairs to our bedroom. The bed was made, pillows arranged perfectly. Victoria had always been meticulous about that. I stood in the doorway, trying to see it as a crime scene, trying to be analytical and detached. But all I could see was the bed where we'd slept together for years, now tainted by the knowledge of what had happened there yesterday. I walked to her side of the bed and opened the nightstand drawer. Nothing unusual. Hand cream, a sleep mask, a book she'd been reading for months. I moved to her closet, feeling like an intruder in my own home, but unable to stop myself. Her clothes hung in perfect order, organized by color and type. Shoes lined up below. Nothing seemed out of place. But then I noticed a small gift bag tucked behind her purses on the top shelf. I pulled it down. Inside was a men's watch, expensive, still in its box. A Rolex Submariner. The receipt was tucked underneath, dated 3 weeks ago. $42,000. My hands started shaking. I'd never owned a watch that cost more than $500. This wasn't for me, this was for him. I took a photo of the receipt with my phone, then carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. My heart was hammering as I backed out of the closet, trying to make sure nothing looked disturbed. $42,000 on our joint credit card, I realized. I'd been helping fund her affair without even knowing it. I went downstairs to my home office and logged into our banking accounts. I'd always handled our finances, paying bills and managing investments, while Victoria focused on her company. She'd have access to everything if she wanted to look, but she never did. "You're better with numbers," she'd always said. "I trust you to handle it." I started going through credit card statements from the past 6 months, and a pattern emerged. Charges at upscale restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel in downtown Portland on a Tuesday afternoon 3 months ago. Lingerie purchases from boutiques I'd never seen her wear anything from. Flowers ordered and delivered to addresses I didn't recognize. The evidence had been there all along, I just hadn't been looking. I downloaded 6 months of statements and saved them to a encrypted folder on my laptop. Then I started checking her public social media, something I rarely did because I'd trusted her. Her Instagram showed the carefully curated life of a successful entrepreneur. Photos of her team, motivational quotes, the occasional snapshot of a healthy meal or sunset. But in the comments, one name kept appearing: Daniel Rothschild. Inspiring as always, he'd commented on a post from 2 weeks ago. Can't wait for our next strategy session, on another from a month back. I clicked on his profile. Daniel Rothschild, CEO of Rothschild Capital Management. The bio listed his credentials, his alma mater, his philanthropic interests. And there, in several photos, was that midnight blue BMW. So now I had a name. I spent the next 3 hours falling down a research rabbit hole. Daniel Rothschild was 44, divorced. No children according to public records. His investment firm managed over $2 billion in assets. He sat on the boards of several tech companies and nonprofits. He'd been featured in Portland Business Monthly last year as one of the city's top 40 under 50. He was also, according to Vitality Wellness Solutions' investor page, a Series B investor in Victoria's company. He'd led their funding round 18 months ago. 18 months. Had it been going on that long? I found a press photo from the funding announcement. Victoria and Daniel standing close together, holding champagne glasses, both smiling at the camera. Her hand was on his arm. The photo was dated exactly 18 months ago. My phone rang, snapping me out of my research trance. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. I took a breath before answering, making sure my voice sounded normal. Hey, just checking in. You seemed off last night. Everything okay? The concern in her voice would have been touching if I didn't know it was performance. Yeah, just tired from the travel. Still catching up. I was thinking we could do dinner tonight. That Italian place you like? We haven't been out in a while. The Italian place I'd been planning to take her to yesterday as a surprise, before I discovered her surprise instead. Sure, I said. What time? 7. I'll make a reservation. After we hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen. She was taking me to dinner, playing the attentive wife. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she was just maintaining the illusion. Either way I'd go. I'd smile and eat pasta and drink wine and watch her perform. Because I was performing now too. That afternoon, I did something I'd never imagined I'd do. I called an old college friend who'd gone into private investigation after his stint in law enforcement. Trevor Mason and I hadn't spoken in over a year, but when I explained what I needed without going into details, he agreed to meet me. We met at a coffee shop in the Pearl District, far enough from my usual haunts that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Trevor looked the same as I remembered, maybe a bit grayer, wearing a sport coat that probably concealed the gun I knew he carried. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. We sat in a corner booth and I laid it out for him. The discovery, the BMW, Daniel Rothschild, the evidence I'd already gathered. Trevor listened without interrupting, his expression neutral in that way cops and investigators have. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want to know?" Everything, how long it's been going on, where they meet, if there are others, if people know. I want the full picture before I decide what to do. Trevor pulled out a small notebook. I'll need some information from you. Her schedule, his details, access to any shared accounts or devices. I'd come prepared. I slid a flash drive across the table. 6 months of financial records, his public information, her calendar sync from our shared cloud, whatever you need. He pocketed the drive. This won't be cheap. I don't care about the cost. He studied me for a moment. You sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance is easier. I already know, I said. I just need proof. Trevor nodded. Give me a week. I'll have a preliminary report. But Andrew, if I find what I think I'm going to find, you need to be ready for it. I'm ready. I wasn't ready. But I was committed. That dinner at Angelo's Italian kitchen felt like a fever dream. Victoria had dressed up, wearing a navy blue dress I'd always loved on her. She'd done her makeup, styled her hair. She looked beautiful, which somehow made everything worse. We sat at a corner table, the kind the restaurant reserves for couples celebrating something. The irony wasn't lost on me. The waitress brought bread and olive oil, took our wine order, left us with menus we both already knew by heart. "This is nice," Victoria said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "We should do this more often." I looked at her hand on mine. The same hand that had touched him. The same fingers that had probably traced his face, his chest, his everything. I wanted to pull away but forced myself to stay still. "We should," I agreed, my voice surprisingly steady. Throughout dinner, she talked about her company, a new partnership they were negotiating, problems with their app's user interface, her plans to hire a new VP of marketing. I nodded in the right places, asked appropriate questions, played my role. But inside I was cataloging everything, the way she kept checking her phone, how her eyes would light up when she read certain messages, then dim when she realized I might have noticed. The fact that she'd ordered the same wine she'd been drinking in the Instagram photo Daniel had liked last week. "How's work going for you?" she asked. And I could hear the obligatory nature of the question. We'd stopped really asking about each other's work years ago. It had become conversational filler. "Same as always," I said. "Client management reports, the usual." She nodded absently, already looking past me toward the door. Was she afraid he might walk in? Or hoping he would? Halfway through our entrees, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something flickered across her face. Excitement? Guilt? It was gone before I could identify it. "Sorry, I need to take this. Work emergency." She stepped away from the table, phone pressed to her ear. Through the restaurant's front window, I could see her pacing on the sidewalk outside. She was smiling. Whatever this emergency was, it wasn't stressful. I watched her through the glass, this woman I'd promised forever to, and tried to remember who she'd been when we met. That ambitious, funny, slightly chaotic woman who'd spilled red wine on her white shirt at that conference and laughed about it. The woman who'd stayed up until 3 a.m. with me talking about everything and nothing. The woman who'd cried when I proposed because she said she'd never thought she'd find someone who understood her. What had happened to her? Or had that version never really existed? Had I been in love with the performance all along? She came back to the table, apologizing. "Sorry, investor stuff. You know how it is." "I know how it is," I echoed. We finished dinner making small talk. She ordered tiramisu to share, and we ate it in near silence, the energy between us as artificial as the sweetener packets on the table. When the check came, I paid with the same credit card she'd used to buy Daniel's watch. In the car on the way home, she seemed restless. "Do you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. I glanced at her, but she was staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're more like roommates than husband and wife, like we're just maintaining this structure because it's what we're supposed to do." Was this her guilt talking? Or was she testing me, seeing if I suspected anything? "Marriage takes work," I said carefully. "We're both busy. Maybe we need to make more effort." "Maybe." She didn't sound convinced. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. That night, lying in bed with 3 feet of empty space between us, I stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathing. She fell asleep quickly, like she always did, while I remained awake, my mind racing. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Trevor. "Preliminary surveillance started. Already have something interesting. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" I typed back, "Where and when?" "Riverside Coffee Company, 7 a.m. I set my phone down and closed my eyes, knowing sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow I'd learn more. Tomorrow the picture would become clearer. Tomorrow I'd have to decide what kind of man I wanted to be in the face of this betrayal. But tonight, lying next to my wife in the darkness, I allowed myself one moment of grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. Grief for the life I'd believed we were building. Grief for the man I used to be who trusted completely and loved without question. That man was gone, and I wasn't sure who was taking his place. The next morning, I told Victoria I had an early client breakfast. She barely looked up from her phone as I left, mumbling something about her own morning meeting. I drove through the pre-dawn darkness to Riverside Coffee Company, a small place tucked between a bookstore and a yoga studio. Trevor was already there, sitting at a back table with 2 coffees in front of him. He slid one toward me as I sat down. "You look like you need this." That obvious? You look like a man who hasn't slept in days. He pulled out a tablet and angled it toward me. You're not going to like this. The screen showed a series of time-stamped photos. Victoria's car parked outside a building I didn't recognize. Daniel's BMW pulling up next to it. The two of them entering together. Timestamps showed they'd been inside for 3 hours. When was this? I asked. Yesterday, while you were at work. Trevor swiped to the next image. The building is a private residence. Penthouse condo registered to a shell company. But I traced it back. It's his. He had a place just for this, a whole separate apartment where he brought her. There's more. Trevor swiped again. Photos from earlier dates. The two of them at restaurants. Walking through a park. One particularly damning shot of them kissing in the parking garage of her office building. How long have you been following them? Just since yesterday when you hired me. But I pulled traffic cam footage and social media geotagging going back 3 months. They're not exactly careful. He paused. There's also this. He played a video clip, security footage from what looked like a hotel hallway. Victoria and Daniel entering a room together. The timestamp read 11 months ago. 11 months. Not 18, but close. This had been going on for nearly a year. I'm sorry, Trevor said, and he sounded like he meant it, but you needed to know. I stared at the frozen image on the screen. Victoria's face was turned toward Daniel, smiling in a way I hadn't seen her smile at me in years, maybe ever. What else? Trevor hesitated. There's talk. Among her employees. Apparently it's not a well-kept secret. Her assistant knows. At least 3 of her senior staff know. They've been covering for her, helping coordinate schedules, making excuses. So I was the fool, the oblivious husband everyone pitied or laughed at behind closed doors. And Daniel's end? Divorced 2 years ago, nasty split according to court records. No current relationship status publicly, but my sources say he's been telling people he's seeing someone serious. He's mentioned settling down again. The implications hit me. He wasn't just having an affair, he was planning a future with her. What do you want me to do? Trevor asked. I can keep digging, get more evidence, or… Keep digging, I said. I want everything. Financial ties, communications if you can get them, everywhere they've been. I want a complete timeline. Trevor nodded. It'll take about a week for the full report. That's fine, I'm not going anywhere. I left the coffee shop as the sun was rising, painting the Portland skyline in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful morning for the city, terrible morning for my life. I drove to work on autopilot, parked in my assigned spot and walked into Morrison Financial Group like I did every day. My assistant, Patricia, greeted me with her usual cheerful good morning and a stack of messages. You okay, Andrew? She asked, studying my face. You look tired. Didn't sleep well, I said, which was true enough. I closed my office door and sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The evidence was mounting. The affair was real, extensive, and involved people I knew. Victoria's staff knew. They'd all been lying to me by omission, watching me play the fool. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Don't forget we're meeting Hannah and Thomas for dinner Friday night, 7 p.m. at the Watershed Grill. Her sister and brother-in-law. I'd forgotten about that. Another performance to give, another few hours of pretending everything was fine. I texted back, I'll be there. Then I opened my computer and created a new encrypted folder. I labeled it Evidence and started organizing everything I had so far. The financial records showing the watch purchase and suspicious charges. Trevor's photos and videos. Timestamps and locations. Daniel's information. The names of Victoria's employees who knew. I was building a case, though I wasn't sure yet what court I'd be presenting it to. Legal divorce proceedings? Public exposure? Private confrontation? I didn't know, but I was methodical by nature, trained to analyze data and identify patterns. This was just another problem to solve, another puzzle to work through. Except this puzzle was my life. Around noon, Patricia knocked on my door. Your 12:30 is here. The Hendersons, about their retirement portfolio? I'd completely forgotten. I glanced at my calendar, saw the appointment, and nodded. Give me 2 minutes. I closed the evidence folder, straightened my tie, and put on my professional face. For the next hour, I'd be Andrew Harris, trusted financial advisor, helping a nice couple in their 60s. plan for their golden years together. I'd smile and make projections, and talk about market trends and diversification strategies. And I'd ignore the bitter irony of helping other people plan their futures while mine was crumbling. The Hendersons left happy, confident in their retirement plan. Patricia brought me coffee and asked if I wanted lunch. I declined. Food seemed impossible. Instead, I sat in my office and thought about Friday night, dinner with Hannah and Thomas. Victoria's sister had never particularly liked me. She'd made that clear from the start, dropping hints that Victoria was settling, that she could do better. Thomas was pleasant enough but clearly deferred to his wife on all matters. How would they react if they knew? Would they be shocked, or had Victoria told them? Were they part of the conspiracy of silence? I pulled up Hannah's social media profile, something I never looked at because I found her posts insufferable. Motivational quotes, humble brags about their renovated house, carefully curated family photos. But scrolling back through the past year, I noticed something. Photos of Victoria at various events, often tagged at locations, and times when she'd told me she was working or with clients. In one photo from 4 months ago, Victoria was at some charity gala. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen. The caption read, "Supporting great causes with great people." Victoria was tagged, along with several others, including Daniel Rothschild. I zoomed in on the photo. They weren't standing next to each other, but they were in the same frame. And Hannah knew. She'd been there. She'd seen them together and never said a word to me. My phone buzzed. Trevor again. "Found something you need to see. Not good. Call me when you can." I stepped out of my office, told Patricia I needed to make some calls, and walked to my car. I sat in the parking garage and dialed Trevor. "What did you find?" "Financial records. Daniel's been making deposits into an account under Victoria's name. Substantial ones. 50,000 here, 75,000 there. It goes back 8 months. My stomach dropped. "How much total?" "Close to 400,000. $400,000. Money I hadn't known about, in an account I didn't have access to. She'd been building her own private nest egg, funded by her lover. "There's more," Trevor continued. "I pulled some property records. Daniel recently purchased a house on the coast. Lincoln City. Oceanfront property. It's titled under that same shell company as the condo, but I found the mortgage documents. Victoria's listed as an intended occupant. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a life together, a house, financial arrangements, a complete future that didn't include me." "Send me everything," I said, my voice hollow. "Andrew, I know this is hard, but you need to start thinking about your next move. This isn't just an affair. This is planned abandonment with financial implications. You need to protect yourself legally." "I will." "I'm serious. Get a lawyer. Today, before she realizes you know. I'll handle it." I hung up and sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Around me, normal people went about their normal days, walking to their cars, talking on phones, living their normal lives. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to her office and confront her right then. I wanted to find Daniel and hit him until my knuckles bled. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I started my car, drove back to my office, and made an appointment with the best divorce attorney in Portland. Then I went home early, before Victoria would be there, and started planning. Because if she could be methodical and calculating about destroying our marriage, I could be methodical and calculating about protecting myself. She'd underestimated me. She thought I was the passive, trusting fool who'd never question her. She was wrong. The law office of Catherine Morrison occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower in downtown Portland. I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by tasteful art and expensive furniture, feeling completely out of place. I'd never imagined I'd be here, consulting a divorce attorney about ending my marriage. Catherine Morrison herself came out to greet me. She was in her mid-50s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything about me in seconds. "Mr. Harris, please come in." Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She gestured to a leather chair across from her desk and sat down, folding her hands in front of her. "Tell me what's going on." I laid it all out, the discovery, the evidence, the financial transfers, the property purchase. I showed her Trevor's report on my phone, the photos, the timeline. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "This is extensive. Your wife and her partner have been planning this for some time. The The financial transfers are particularly concerning. What do I do? First, we need to protect your assets. You said you have joint accounts? Everything is joint. Checking, savings, investment accounts. The house is in both our names. Catherine nodded. We need to move carefully. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. But those transfers to her separate account complicate things. That's marital money being hidden. Can we get it back? Possibly, but first I need you to do exactly as I say. Don't confront her yet. Don't let her know you're suspicious. Keep everything as normal as possible while we prepare. How long? Give me 2 weeks. I'll have my team pull all the necessary records, file the preliminary paperwork, and set up protections on your accounts. When we move decisively. But timing is everything. 2 weeks. I could manage 2 weeks. One more thing, Catherine said. Do you want this marriage to end? The question should have been simple, but sitting there, looking out at the city, I realized I wasn't sure. Part of me still loved Victoria, or loved who she'd been. Part of me wanted to believe this was fixable, that we could somehow recover from this. But a larger part of me knew the truth. This wasn't a mistake or a momentary lapse. This was calculated betrayal over nearly a year. She'd built a separate life, made plans for a future without me, and lied to my face every single day. Yes, I said. I want it to end. Catherine nodded. Then we'll make sure you're protected. I'll be in touch within 48 hours with next steps. I left her office feeling strange, lighter somehow, like I'd made a decision that had been weighing on me without realizing it. The marriage was over. I just had to play my part a little longer. That Friday, I met Victoria at the Watershed Grill for dinner with her sister Hannah and brother-in-law Thomas. I arrived first, ordered a whiskey, and tried to prepare myself for an evening of performance. Victoria arrived 10 minutes late, breathless and apologetic. She kissed my cheek and slid into the booth beside me. She smelled like that cologne again, his cologne. She'd been with him before coming here. Sorry, work ran late. No problem, I said, taking a sip of my drink. Hannah and Thomas arrived shortly after, and the evening began. Hannah dominated the conversation, as she always did, talking about their recent kitchen renovation, their plans to buy a vacation property, Thomas's promotion at his firm. You two should really think about updating your kitchen, Hannah said, looking at Victoria. That tile backsplash is so dated. We've been too busy, Victoria said. Maybe next year. Next year, when she planned to be living in that beach house with Daniel. I watched her lie so effortlessly, and something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't hard for her. The deception came naturally. How many other times had she lied? How many other things didn't I know? Andrew, you're quiet tonight, Thomas observed. Everything okay? Just tired. Work has been demanding. I know that feeling, he said, launching into a story about his latest case. I nodded in appropriate places, but my attention was on Victoria and Hannah. They'd excused themselves to the restroom, and through the partially open door I could hear their voices. I strained to listen. He seems off, Hannah was saying. Does he suspect? No, he's clueless. He always is. They laughed. Both of them. My wife and her sister, laughing about how oblivious I was. When are you going to tell him? Hannah asked. After the Series C closes. Daniel wants to wait until the company valuation is finalized. Then I'll file for divorce, and we can move forward without complications. Smart. You've worked too hard to let Andrew take half of everything. They were coming back. I turned my attention to Thomas, who was still talking about his case, and smiled like I'd been paying attention the whole time. The rest of dinner was torture. Every word Victoria spoke felt like a needle under my skin. Every smile at me felt like mockery. When Hannah made a joke about marriage being work and Victoria squeezed my hand in false solidarity, I had to resist the urge to pull away. But I didn't. I played my part. I laughed at jokes, answered questions, and acted like everything was fine. Because Catherine had said 2 weeks, and I could last 2 weeks. After dinner, in the car on the way home, Victoria was in a good mood. She talked about her sister's renovation, made plans for us to have them over for dinner next month, mentioned maybe taking a weekend trip somewhere. All lies. All performance. All part of the carefully constructed illusion she'd been maintaining. "You're quiet," she said as we pulled into our driveway. "Just thinking about work." "You work too hard," she said, touching my arm. "Maybe we should plan that trip soon. Get away from everything." I looked at her in the dim light of the car. She seemed so sincere. If I didn't know better, I'd believe she actually cared. "Maybe," I said. Inside, she headed upstairs to change. I went to my office and pulled up the encrypted folder. Catherine had emailed me a preliminary strategy document. I read through it carefully, making notes, preparing myself for what was coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Update. Victoria meeting Daniel tomorrow at the condo. 2 p.m. confirmation from building security. Also found something else. Call when you can." I stepped outside into the backyard and called him. "What did you find?" "Credit card records show Victoria purchased tickets to Maui. 2 tickets, leaving 3 weeks from now. 5-day trip, but you're not the other passenger." "Let me guess, Daniel." "Yeah. They're registered at the Grand Wailea under Mr. and Mrs. Rothschild. She was going to Hawaii with him, using our money, pretending to be his wife." "There's something else," Trevor continued. "I've been monitoring her communications where possible. She's been texting with someone named Marcus. Turns out Marcus is a divorce attorney. She's already consulted with him. So she was preparing too, planning her exit strategy while still sleeping in my bed every night." "Send me everything," I said. "Already in your email. Andrew, I know Catherine told you to wait, but you should know they're moving fast on their end. If Victoria files first, it could complicate things." "Catherine knows what she's doing." "I hope so. Because from where I'm sitting, your wife is about to blindside you legally and financially." "She's going to try," I said, "but I'm not the man she thinks I am anymore." After I hung up, I stood in the darkness of my backyard, looking up at our bedroom window. The light was on. Victoria was probably getting ready for bed, going through her nightly routine, completely unaware that I knew everything. She thought she was so clever, thought she'd planned everything perfectly. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. The next morning, Victoria told me she had a full day of meetings and would be home late. I watched her leave, knowing exactly where she'd be at 2 p.m., knowing who she'd be with, knowing what they'd be doing. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Patricia sounded concerned, told me to rest and feel better. I promised I would. Then I got in my car and drove. Not to follow Victoria, not to the condo where I knew she'd be. Instead, I drove to Vitality Wellness Solutions, office in the Pearl District. I parked across the street and waited. Around noon, employees started trickling out for lunch. I recognized several faces from the company photos on Victoria's website. Then I saw who I was looking for. Jessica Chen, Victoria's executive assistant. Mid-20s, always impeccably dressed, fiercely loyal to Victoria according to everything I'd observed. She walked into a nearby sandwich shop. I followed. The lunch crowd was thick enough that I could stand in line behind her without seeming obvious. When she ordered, I stepped up beside her at the pickup counter. "Jessica, right? Victoria's assistant?" She turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Mr. Harris. Hi, I didn't know you were in the area." "I was nearby for a meeting. Mind if I ask you something?" Her expression became guarded. "Sure." "How long have you known about Daniel?" The color drained from her face. Her sandwich was called, but she didn't move to get it. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You coordinate her schedule. You cover for her. You know exactly what I mean." She looked around nervously, lowering her voice. "Mr. Harris, I can't talk about this." "You don't have to confirm anything. I already know. I've known for over a week. I have photos, financial records, everything. I just want to understand one thing. Why? Why help her do this?" Jessica's shoulders slumped. "She's my boss. What was I supposed to do? Tell me, warn me, something." "I wanted to," she said quietly. "A few times I almost did, but it wasn't my place. And honestly, Victoria said you two were basically over anyway, that you were staying together out of convenience." "Is that what she told people?" Jessica nodded. "She made it sound like you both knew the marriage was done, like this was just the natural next step." So that was the story. I was the husband who didn't care, who was too busy with work to notice his marriage falling apart. I was complicit in my own betrayal, at least in the version Victoria had sold to everyone around her. "When did it start?" I asked. "The truth." Jessica hesitated, then sighed. "About a year ago, right after the Series B funding closed. Daniel came on as an investor, and they just clicked. At first, I thought it was just professional admiration. But then the lunch meetings got longer. The business dinners became more frequent. By 6 months ago, it was obvious. Did anyone try to stop it? A couple of people expressed concerns, but Victoria shut that down fast. She made it clear that her personal life was off limits for discussion, and Daniel brings a lot of value as an investor, so no one wanted to rock the boat. Her sandwich was getting cold on the counter. Mine had been cold too. Neither of us moved to get them. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I protect myself. And Jessica, when this all comes out, you might want to think about where your loyalties lie. Because Victoria isn't the person you think she is." I left her standing there and walked out. I didn't need the sandwich anymore. I'd gotten what I came for: confirmation, timeline, and the knowledge that Victoria had been controlling the narrative all along. I drove home and found Catherine Morrison had emailed me. The subject line read, "We need to move faster." I called her immediately. "Andrew, I've been doing some digging. Victoria's attorney, Marcus Sullivan, is aggressive. He's known for preemptive strikes in divorce cases. If Victoria files first with the right motions, she could freeze your access to accounts, claim temporary support, and tie you up legally before you have a chance to respond. How much time do we have?" "Based on the pattern I'm seeing, I'd guess she's planning to file within the next 2 weeks. We need to file first. Tomorrow, if possible." Tomorrow. The word hung in the air. What do I need to do? "Come to my office at 9 a.m. Bring any additional evidence you've gathered. We'll finalize the paperwork and file by noon. Once we file, you'll need to have her served. I recommend doing it in a way that's public enough to be official but private enough not to cause a scene. And then? Then we fight. But, Andrew, you need to be ready for this to get ugly. She's going to be blindsided, and people don't react well to that, especially people who thought they were in control." I thought about Victoria, always so composed, always so calculated. She'd planned every move carefully, but she hadn't planned for this. "I'll be there at 9 a.m. After hanging up, I sat in my office and thought about the next steps. Filing for divorce would make this real. There would be no going back. Part of me, a small part that I hated, still hoped this was all a nightmare I'd wake up from. But I knew better. This was real. This was my life now. I spent the rest of the afternoon gathering every piece of evidence I had. Bank statements, credit card records, Trevor's investigation report, screenshots of social media posts, photos of the watch receipt, property records showing the beach house. I organized it all chronologically, creating a timeline that showed not just the affair, but the financial deception that went along with it. Victoria came home around 8, exactly as she'd predicted. She looked relaxed, satisfied. She'd spent the afternoon with Daniel, and it showed in the way she moved, the slight smile playing at her lips. "How was your day?" she asked, kicking off her heels. "Productive. Yours?" "Exhausting. Back-to-back meetings. I'm going to take a bath." She disappeared upstairs, and I heard the water running. I stood in the kitchen, looking around at the home we'd built together. The coffee maker we'd bought on our first anniversary. The dining table where we'd hosted friends. The artwork we'd chosen together. All of it felt like evidence of a life that had never really existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "FYI, Daniel just made a reservation at Kennard for next Saturday night. Party of 2. Looks like they're celebrating something." Next Saturday. That would be after Victoria planned to file for divorce. They'd be celebrating the beginning of their new life together. Except it wasn't going to work out that way. I texted back, "Thanks for the heads up." Then I went upstairs and knocked on the bathroom door. "Yeah?" Victoria's voice was muffled by the water. "I'm going to work in my office for a bit. Don't wait up." "Okay." I went to my office and pulled out a piece of paper. I started writing. Not a letter to Victoria. Not a confrontation. Just thoughts. A way to process everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. I wrote about the man I'd been 2 weeks ago. Trusting, comfortable, maybe a little naive. I wrote about the marriage I'd thought I had, the future I'd imagined, the life I'd believed we were building together. Then I wrote about the man I was becoming, harder, more careful, someone who verified instead of trusted, someone who protected himself first. I didn't like this new version of me, but I understood why he existed. Around midnight, I finally went upstairs. Victoria was asleep, curled on her side, facing away from me. I got into bed carefully, trying not to disturb her. In the darkness, lying next to her one of the last times I would, I allowed myself a moment of honest emotion. I was sad. Sad for what we'd lost, or what I thought we had. Sad for the future that would never happen. Sad for the man I used to be who'd believed in forever. But beneath the sadness was something else. Something colder and more determined. Tomorrow, I would walk into Catherine's office and file for divorce. Tomorrow, the careful game Victoria thought she was playing would be disrupted. Tomorrow, she would discover that I wasn't the passive, oblivious fool she'd taken me for. Tomorrow, everything would change. I woke up before dawn, Victoria still sleeping beside me. I got dressed quietly and left the house while she was still asleep. There was a note I'd prepared the night before, left on the kitchen counter. Early client meeting, see you tonight. Simple, normal, nothing to raise suspicion. I arrived at Catherine's office at 8:45. She was already there, along with 2 associates I hadn't met before. They had documents spread across the conference room table. Andrew, good. We have everything ready. I just need you to review and sign. I sat down and started reading. Petition for dissolution of marriage, asset division requests, documentation of financial misconduct, requests for forensic accounting given the hidden transfers. It was all there, laid out in precise legal language. The associates walked me through each section, explaining implications and options. Catherine had been thorough. We were requesting not just an equitable division of assets, but reimbursement for the funds Victoria had hidden, compensation for the marital money spent on her affair, and a detailed accounting of all business interests. What about the business, I asked. Vitality Wellness Solutions. That's complicated, Catherine said. Normally, businesses started during marriage are marital assets. But she had investors, including Daniel, which complicates valuation. We're requesting an independent valuation and claiming a portion based on marital funds that supported the business. Will that work? It should. You supported her while she built the company. Your income paid household expenses, which freed up her capital. That's a contribution the court will recognize. I signed every document. Each signature felt like closing a door on my old life. What happens now? We file these within the hour. Then we need to have Victoria served. I recommend doing it at her office, mid-afternoon when she's likely to be there but not in the middle of a crucial meeting. Professional but definitive. Today. The element of surprise is our advantage. She won't have time to hide assets or create complications. I nodded, my throat tight. This was really happening. One more thing, Catherine said. Expect her to call you. Expect anger, confusion, maybe threats. Don't engage. Refer her to me. Everything from this point forward goes through attorneys. Understood. The associates gathered the documents and left to file them. Catherine and I sat in the conference room, and she studied me carefully. How are you holding up? I don't know. Numb, mostly. That's normal. But Andrew, you need to prepare yourself. When Victoria gets served, she's going to realize you know everything. She's going to feel cornered, and cornered people lash out. Stay calm. Don't let her manipulate you emotionally. I won't. Good. Because, based on everything you've told me and everything I've seen, your wife is a skilled manipulator. She's been running a complex deception for a year. She'll try to use that skill on you when this hits. I thought about Victoria's performance over the past 2 weeks, the concerned wife act, the dinner at Angelo's, the false intimacy. Catherine was right. Victoria was very good at manipulation. But I wasn't the same man anymore. I left Catherine's office around noon and drove to a coffee shop near Victoria's office. The process server, a woman named Linda, met me there. She was professional and efficient, explaining that she'd deliver the documents to Victoria personally and ensure proper service. How does she usually react to unexpected visitors? Linda asked. She's always composed, professional. She won't make a scene. Good. That makes it easier. I'll go in around 3. That gives you time to get somewhere safe. Somewhere safe, as if Victoria posed a physical threat. But I understood what Linda meant. I needed to not be home when Victoria got the news. I needed distance. I spent the afternoon driving around Portland, my phone on silent. I drove past Harborview Park where I'd sat processing the initial discovery, past Angelo's where we'd had that fake dinner, past Trevor's office, past all the locations that had become markers in this story. Around 4, my phone started buzzing. Multiple calls from Victoria. Text messages. I didn't look at them. Catherine had been clear. No contact. At 5, Catherine called. She's been served, and Andrew, she's furious. She called my office screaming about wrongful filing and hidden agendas. I told her everything goes through me now. She's lawyering up as we speak. What do? Go home, pack a bag, stay somewhere else for a few days while this initial explosion passes. A hotel, a friend's place, anywhere but that house. Give her space to process. It's my house too. I know, but trust me on this. The first 72 hours after service are the most volatile. Let her have the space. We'll establish boundaries later. I didn't want to leave my own home, but Catherine had been right about everything else. I drove home, parked down the street, and waited until I saw Victoria's car leave. Then I went inside quickly, packed a bag with clothes and essentials, grabbed my laptop, and left. I checked into a hotel downtown, a nice one with a view of the city. Room 1247. I sat on the bed and finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls from Victoria, 12 text messages. I opened them chronologically. What the hell is this? Call me now. I can't believe you did this. We need to talk. You're making a huge mistake. This is insane. Call me back. We can fix this. Andrew, please. Let's talk about this like adults. You're gonna regret this. Fine. Don't call. But you'll be hearing from my attorney. The progression from shock to anger to threats was clear. I could almost hear her voice in each message, could picture her face as she typed them. But what struck me most was what wasn't there. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done, no admission of guilt. Just anger that I dared to disrupt her plans. I texted back once. All communication goes through my attorney, Catherine Morrison. Then I blocked her number. My phone rang almost immediately. Hannah. I declined the call. Then Thomas. Declined. Then a number I didn't recognize. Declined. They were circling the wagons. Victoria had called in her support system, and they were trying to reach me. But I was done being accessible. Done being the reasonable one. Done playing a game where I was the only one following rules. I ordered room service and turned on the television, not really watching it. The hotel room felt surreal. 2 weeks ago, I'd been in a hotel room in Seattle, thinking about surprising my wife with dinner. Now I was in a hotel room in my own city, hiding from that same wife after filing for divorce. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. Heard it went down today. You okay? I typed back, as okay as I can be. Need company? I can bring bourbon. I almost said yes. Having someone to talk to sounded good. But I needed to sit with this. To process it alone. Thanks, but I need to think. I get it, but if you change your mind, I'm around. I set my phone down and walked to the window. The city spread out below me, lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably with Daniel, telling him about the divorce filing, strategizing their response. Somewhere out there, Hannah was probably calling everyone she knew, spinning the story to make me the villain. Let them. I had the truth. I had the evidence. I had the law on my side. But standing there looking out at the city, I realized something. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel righteous or justified. I just felt tired. Tired of the deception. Tired of the performance. Tired of the person I'd had to become to protect myself. I wanted this to be over, but I knew it was just beginning. The legal battle would take months. The division of assets would be complicated. The emotional fallout would be extensive. And somewhere in all of that, I'd have to figure out who Andrew Harris was when he wasn't Victoria's husband anymore. That was the question that scared me most. For 9 years, I'd been half of a partnership. I'd been someone's husband. I'd defined myself partly through that relationship. Now that it was ending, who was I? I didn't know yet. But I was going to find out. 3 days in the hotel gave me clarity I hadn't expected. I spent the time working remotely, talking to Catherine about strategy, and avoiding everyone from my former life. On the 4th morning, she called with news. Victoria's attorney filed a response. They're claiming emotional abandonment, saying you neglected the marriage and drove her away. They're also contesting the financial misconduct claims. Of course they are. But here's the interesting part. They want to settle quickly. Marcus Sullivan called me this morning, suggesting mediation. That tells me they're worried about what comes out in discovery. What do you think? I think we have them cornered. The evidence is damning. A trial would expose everything publicly, including Daniel's involvement and the hidden accounts. Victoria's reputation would be destroyed, and that affects her business. They want this quiet. I don't want quiet, I said, surprising myself. I want the truth out there. Catherine was silent for a moment. Andrew, I understand the impulse, but revenge isn't always satisfying. What do you actually want from this? Money? The house? Just to be free? I thought about it. What did I want? I want her to face consequences, real ones, not just write a check and move on like nothing happened. Then we go to discovery. We subpoena everything. Bank records, communications, testimony from her employees. We make this as painful as possible legally. But Andrew, that means it's painful for you too. Your private life becomes public record. I can handle it. All right, then we fight. That afternoon, I finally went home. Victoria's car wasn't there, which Catherine had confirmed she'd arranged. I walked through the house that suddenly felt like a museum of my failed marriage. Everything looked the same but meant something different now. I went to our bedroom and started the process of separating my life from hers, clothes into boxes. Personal items packed away. I wasn't moving out permanently yet, but I was establishing boundaries. This was no longer our space. It was contested territory. In her closet, I found the gift bag with Daniel's watch still hidden behind her purses. On impulse, I took it, not to keep, but as a symbol. She'd spent $42,000 of our money on her lover. That watch represented everything wrong with what she'd done. I packed it carefully in bubble wrap and put it in a box labeled Evidence. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Andrew, Daniel's voice. Smooth, confident. We need to talk. No, we don't. I understand you're upset, but this situation is more complicated than you realize. Victoria and I never meant for things to happen this way. The audacity of it stunned me. He was calling to explain? To justify? You're right, I said, keeping my voice calm. You never meant for me to find out. That's the only thing you didn't mean to happen. Look, man to man, your marriage was over before I came into the picture. Victoria told me you two were basically roommates. I'm not the villain here. Man to man, I laughed, bitter. You've been sleeping with my wife, in my house, in my bed, and you want to talk man to man? You don't get that privilege. I'm trying to be reasonable. Then be reasonable somewhere else. And Daniel, stay away from my wife. She's about to be very expensive for both of you. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking. The nerve of him, calling me, trying to rationalize what they'd done, trying to make it sound like some inevitable romance rather than a calculated betrayal. But his call told me something important. They were scared. The divorce filing had disrupted their perfect plan, and now they were scrambling. Good, let them scramble. I finished packing my things and loaded boxes into my car. I wasn't leaving permanently, but I was establishing that I could, that I wasn't trapped here, that I had options and agency. As I carried the last box out, I saw our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watching from her garden. She waved tentatively. I waved back. Soon everyone would know. The divorce would become neighborhood gossip, dinner party conversation, social media speculation. Part of me dreaded it, but another part welcomed it. Let people know what Victoria had done. Let her face the social consequences of her choices. I drove back to the hotel with my car full of boxes and my head full of plans. Tomorrow, Catherine would file for full discovery. Next week, we'd depose Jessica and other Vitality Wellness employees who knew about the affair. Within a month, we'd have a complete picture of everything Victoria and Daniel had been planning. And then, I'd make my final move. The one Victoria would never see coming. The one that would truly make her understand what she'd lost. 2 weeks later, I sat in Catherine's office reviewing depositions. Jessica had confirmed the timeline. Victoria's CFO had admitted knowing about the affair. Even Victoria's sister Hannah had been forced to acknowledge she'd known for months. The evidence was overwhelming. But Catherine had been right about one thing. It was painful for everyone. Marcus Sullivan called again, Catherine said. They're increasing their settlement offer. Full disclosure of the hidden accounts and equal split of marital assets. And Victoria keeps the business, but you get a buyout based on independent valuation. What's the number? Including the house, investments, and business valuation, you'd walk away with approximately $2.3 million. It was more than fair, more than I'd expected. But something about it felt wrong. Too clean, too easy. What's the catch? Confidentiality agreement. You can't discuss the affair publicly or disclose any details about their relationship. Essentially, you take the money and stay quiet. There it was. Victoria wanted to buy my silence. She wanted to erase her mistakes with money, move forward with Daniel, and pretend none of this had happened. No, I said. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Andrew, that's a substantial settlement. You'd be financially secure and free to move on. I don't want to move on quietly. I want the truth on record. The truth is on record in court documents. Anyone who cares can find it. But she wants me to pretend it didn't happen, to let her keep her reputation intact while she destroyed our marriage. I can't do that. Catherine leaned back in her chair. Then what do you want? I'd been thinking about this for days, about the opening line I'd written what felt like a lifetime ago, about packing Daniel's bags with something that would expose the truth. I want a full trial. I want testimony. I want every detail in the public record. And I want one more thing. What's that? Access to Victoria's company communications, emails, messages, everything. If we're doing full discovery, I want to see exactly how they conducted this affair and what they said about me. Catherine nodded slowly. That's aggressive. It will humiliate her professionally. She humiliated me personally for a year. Fair is fair. All right. But Andrew, once we go this route, there's no turning back. This becomes scorched earth. Your life, her life, everything gets exposed. I'm ready. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. In that time, discovery produced exactly what I'd expected. Emails between Victoria and Daniel discussing their future together, mocking my obliviousness. Text messages coordinating their meetings. Calendar invitations disguised as business appointments. But the most damning evidence came from something unexpected. Victoria's company laptop, which IT had been required to turn over, contained a document titled Exit Strategy. It was a detailed plan for divorcing me, written 8 months ago. It outlined how to hide assets, minimize my claim on her business, and transition to a life with Daniel with minimal financial impact. She'd been planning this for 8 months, while sharing my bed, eating dinner with me, pretending to be my wife. She'd been meticulously planning my removal from her life. Catherine entered it into evidence, and I watched Marcus Sullivan's face pale when he saw it. This changes things, he said quietly. The week before trial, Victoria finally called me directly, bypassing attorneys. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Andrew, please. This has gone too far. I never wanted it to be like this. Can we please just talk? Meet me for coffee. No lawyers, just us. We owe each other that much after 9 years. We owed each other. The phrase was almost funny. I didn't call back, but I did text, see you in court. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified about the discovery, the evidence, the year of deception. Victoria testified, trying to paint a picture of a marriage that had died naturally, of finding comfort with someone who understood her in ways I never had. But then Catherine entered the exit strategy document into evidence and asked Victoria to explain it. I watched her face cycle through emotions, shock that we had it, panic about what it contained, then calculated composure as she tried to explain it away. It was just notes, thoughts I was processing. It didn't mean I was actually planning anything. These notes include specific dollar amounts, attorney recommendations, and timelines, Catherine said. That seems quite detailed for casual thoughts. Victoria's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the document. They'd seen the calculation behind her betrayal. On the final day, the judge ruled. Marital assets split equally, but Victoria had to reimburse the hidden funds plus interest. I got the house. She kept her business, but I received a substantial settlement based on my contribution to its growth. And critically, no confidentiality agreement. The court record was public. I'd won. Not just financially, but in the way that mattered. The truth was out there, documented and official. As we left the courtroom, Victoria tried to approach me. Daniel stood behind her, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. I stopped and looked at them both. I packed your bags. I said quietly, so only they could hear. Everything you built together, all those plans, all that careful strategy. I packed it full of truth, and now everyone knows exactly who you both are. Victoria's face crumpled, and for the first time since this began, I saw genuine emotion from her. Regret, maybe, or just grief for the reputation she'd lost. I walked away without looking back. Catherine had told me revenge wasn't satisfying, but this wasn't revenge. This was justice. This was consequences. This was the truth finally matching the reality. 6 months later, I sold the house and moved to Seattle. Fresh start, new city, away from the memories and the gossip. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Victoria and Daniel had broken up under the pressure of the public scandal. Her business had survived, but she'd stepped down as CEO. Hannah had stopped speaking to her after their relationship was exposed in testimony. The affair that was supposed to be Victoria's perfect escape had destroyed everything she'd built. As for me, I was learning to be Andrew Harris again, not someone's husband, just myself. It was harder than I'd expected, but also freeing. I was dating occasionally, working at a new firm, building a life that was entirely mine. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that Tuesday afternoon when I'd come home early and heard laughter from upstairs. That moment had shattered my world, but it had also freed me from living a lie. I'd packed those bags with truth, and in doing so I'd unpacked myself from a marriage that had been hollow for longer than I'd wanted to admit. It hurt, but it was honest. And honest, I'd learned, was the only way forward. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.